Welcome into Forward Progress right here on the Forward Progress YouTube channel, part of the Hammer Betting Network and powered by Pinnacle Sportsbook. This is the show where we recap the day that was in the NFL and we look ahead to next week. People are often asking me, how do I know what lines to bet early in the week? Well, we're going to try to give you some advice. We do generally a pretty decent job of predicting where these lines are going to go, and momentarily, Pinnacle Sportsbook will be opening up lines for next week. We'll bring them up on the screen. We'll discuss them. We'll talk about where we think they are going to go. Rob Pizzola here, joined by my partner in crime on Sunday nights, Clive Bixby. Clive, how's it going?
What's going on? How are we doing?
I put it on my little sub caption here. Put me on the injury report with concussion. What a day today. So I had a losing day, made some back at 4:00, luckily. But it was one of those days, which I haven't had yet this year. We're only 5 weeks into the season, where it felt like all the bets were going to win at one point, and then the majority of them lost. And those are the tough days where you feel like your process led you in the right direction, but you didn't get the results, and that's sometimes frustrating as a bettor.
Yeah, it sucks. Even like I'd have to look back at some of the numbers, but I mean, I think we were pretty spot on last week in terms of sides and which way they moved. I think we only got one that really moved in the opposite direction, and it didn't even move much. But it was kind of a nuts day, like just weird, crazy shit happening, injuries too. Like it's going to be an interesting week upcoming.
We had definitely at least a couple games in which either the side or total would have been impacted by the time that you bet it. Specifically the Houston-Atlanta game, where ended up going off and closing as Atlanta -2.5. So anyone who bet Houston early or bet them late ends up winning a Houston bet. If you bet them anytime in between, you'd lose that bet. So obviously the importance of getting the right number. For me, I learned the lesson the hard way, where we were like a little bit, gung-ho about going on the Dolphins and Giants over. Played a lot of 47.5. There were 47s in market today. Ended up pushing half a bet, but losing another half a bet because of getting in a little bit too early. So that's just kind of like the frustration. I see Mark in the chat saying he middled that game, the Atlanta-Houston one. Yeah, there was opportunities out there. There was lots of big line moves this week. I thought about trying to do that with Minnesota and Kansas City, where we saw a pretty big move in that game. Arizona, Cincy, heavy Arizona money at open. Pretty big move in there. But overall, frustrating day. And now I basically am here rooting for my Dallas Cowboys on Sunday Night Football in order to go to bed in a not a foul mood.
Yeah, so the Houston number, if we would have got it at 3, anybody who got it at 3, there were some available on the show last week. That was a good number for you. But it's weird. So Arizona, that moved towards Arizona, Rams, Minnesota. So the 3 home dogs that all took money ended up not covering. And it wasn't, I mean, Minnesota's a different game, I would say. The Rams looked like they were in it for a little bit, but then the second half pull away. And kind of the same thing in Cincy, Arizona. Cincy actually looked like a football team this week. Joe Burrow looked like, at least 80% of Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I want to talk about that game in particular, and we'll obviously break down the card next week when lines are getting posted. But I'm not a big, time the market type of guy. Like, obviously, a lot of people want to try to do that in every aspect of life, whether that's the stock market, crypto, betting on sports or whatever. But I'm not the guy that's going to just go place money on the Bengals without having them show it to me first. In hindsight, this might be one of those games where at the end of the year, you look back and you're like, how in God's name was Cincinnati -3 at Arizona? But with everything we'd seen previous, it's just too challenging. It's not like you're not. It's not just a team that's performing poorly. It's a team whose quarterback has been dealing with an injury, but out of nowhere today, pretty big offensive performance. And now that's going to be interesting to monitor going forwards, because you have the secondary question of was it just Arizona? Did they perform because it was Arizona?
Yeah, and they've had other teams that they could have performed against and did not. He looked like he was moving better today. I didn't watch the full game. I mean, I had Red Zone on while I had Jets Denver on another screen. So it's hard to say. It's like one data point. It's how hard do you go back towards priors versus how much do you just let it go and say this is a one-off and I'm still not sold.
Yeah, that's inherently challenging, I think, with the Bengals. And what makes it even more challenging is you just have such limited games to deal with. And it's in like over the course of a week or an NFL season. And you don't want to just start crossing off games because quarterback's injured. That's just going to limit your volume. But that's incredibly challenging. Rams Eagles, you mentioned, that was an interesting one. Second half, the Eagles just kind of ran away with it. I feel really bad for the people who got in on that early total, because the opener when we were talking last week was 46.5, closed 50. So moved through 47, got up to as high as 51 at one point. Looked like that first half, that final drive of the first half that the Eagles had, where they went the entire field in like less than a minute. There was a horse collar tackle on A.J. Brown. The Eagles go for it, which I absolutely loved on the 4th and 1 or not, whatever. It was just last play of the half. It was going to be last play of the half regardless. They go for it. It's 17-14 at the half. And then the Rams just cannot like even touch the ball in the second half, get anything going. And I think I talked about this on the pizza buffet this morning, but with the Eagles, they haven't had like that complete performance yet, like some games last year, where we just looked at this team and said it's a powerhouse, but it's still such a good team. And people are constantly looking for reasons to fade them, not back them, but they're just get the job done, man, pretty consistently now. And maybe it's not the same level as last year, but and they're like new coordinators and whatever, but they're just getting the job done.
Yeah, the only future I bet in the offseason for Super Bowl was the Eagles. Like, I'm not a big futures guy anyway, so complete full transparency. But they were the only team that I thought that was going to still exceed expectations while being as good as they were last year. Now, I'm not seeing that, but today was a little bit of a step in the right direction. Hurts looked a little bit better. Little more active, really good game, 15.1 EPA, really solid.
Yeah. Patrick in the chat says comeback player of the year campaign started today. And he was 80-1 in the comeback player of the year market this week, with Baker Mayfield on a bye and DeMar Hamlin not playing. So for those who took it, not a bad bet. Fire Ice 39. I continue to bet against the Steelers to watch them win the most disgusting games. That Ravens and Browns game are two games that they just pulled out of their ass. Steelers, I believe, are on a bye next week, but the Ravens are away. They have the London game in Tennessee. So we're going to talk about that game. But Pinnacle is opening up right now as we speak. And I do want to get to the games as they start opening. As a reminder, Pinnacle, proud sponsor of the show. They've been in business for 25 years, but one of the reasons that I love doing this with the openers from Pinnacle is because they're actually taking a real bet right now. You can bet up to $3,000 on the side for any of these openers. They're not going to limit you. This is just a no-brainer for someone who wants to get in early. You're not going to get punished for betting at Pinnacle on openers like you might at some other sports books. So bet smart, bet Pinnacle, your trusted sportsbook partner for 25 years. And if you are going to sign up in Ontario, use code HAMMER, HAMMER. It helps support myself, Clive, keep the lights on when I have days like today in the NFL. For all the Hammer Betting Network, we do appreciate the support. You must be 19 plus, not available in the US. And as always, I joke around, by the way, people. Please play responsibly. Let's start with the Thursday night football game. I always find out about I don't look at these in advance, so I find out what games I'm going to be doing live watch-alongs for, Clive, when me and you break them down. Opener at Pinnacle for an AFC West matchup between the Denver Broncos and the Kansas City Chiefs. Denver on the road at Arrowhead, and we're looking at a line of KC minus 10.5 even So minus 10.5 plus 100, and a total of 51 juiced pretty heavily to the over at minus 118. I'll let you start with any early thoughts here, but I watched a lot of Denver and the New York Jets because I had the over in that game, and it's getting tough with this Denver team.
It was, I mean, the majority of their offense felt like Russell Wilson throwing the clock back and running and extending drives and not much else. I mean, they were able to run the ball effectively, but I think what was really terrible, and Suma kind of hinted to this in a tweet earlier, both teams in the red zone with their play calling, like I think 5 times in the red zone in the first, 2.5 quarters, 12 points. Absolutely brutal. Jets like not getting the ball spiked at the end of the first half to get 3 on the board. But I mean, Denver's defense is not good. They're pretty atrocious. I'm looking at the total as well, and I actually kind of think this will spike up quickly because Denver's that bad.
So pretty interesting. KC, no injuries today for the most part. Denver, I think their nose tackle, DJ Jones, left the game, but for the most part as well, they played a game where they didn't suffer any additional injuries. The Denver as a whole, the Jets went 0 for 5 in the red zone today. Like, Jets had 5 red zone trips. They did not score a touchdown when they got in the red zone. So whatever the final score was there, 24-21, like incredibly misleading in the sense that, like, basically the Jets said, we are going to run the ball on you today. And it just worked. Like, they just pounded the rock. And that was including offensive line injuries for the Jets. Elijah Vera Tucker, their best offensive lineman, left the game. They had a 0.2 EPA per play running the ball, 234 net yards on the ground. And that's like with no threat of a pass with Zach Wilson there. So Denver is terrible. KC, on the other hand, like they cover the spread. Box score wise, you'll look at it, and basically they did better on high leverage plays. 9 of 15 on third down. They had a 3rd and 18 like miracle pass. Andy Reid was going for it on 4th and 1s, which was like absolutely insane. You don't typically see that, but these are like, you talk about the total 51. You look at all the Broncos games, with the exception of week 1 against the Raiders, high scoring games, right? Defense can't stop anything. You look at the Chiefs. Chiefs haven't played a game that's had more than 51 points yet this year. 5 games. That includes the game against the Bears. It was 41-10. That's kind of what stands out in my head as like the most comparable that we have. We had them home game against the Bears, blowout potential, but where the line is priced right now, I think it's just good numbers. Like, honestly, I think 10.5. I don't want to lay it with KC. It's not appetizing enough for me to want to take the points with Denver. I'm sure the look ahead in this was probably less. I don't know off the top of my head, but it was probably something like 10, maybe 9.5. And 51, yeah. Like, the Chiefs offense has nothing downfield. This is my big concern in a game of this total, right? I think you see a very, we joke about the Andy Reid playbook, right? Is this a game where he brings out the good plays, or is this the game where Pacheco's running on 1st and 2nd down and they're swinging out to McKinnon on 3rd down? Because they don't have anything down the field right now.
Yeah. What I'm thinking of, and this can obviously be something that chews up a lot of clock too. It's like, where is Denver going to get the stops on 3rd down, right? Like, it's not necessarily just chunk plays that beat Denver. It's the fact that they can't even get off the field. Even Zach Wilson was able to complete some 3rd down throws down the field and look adequate. 51 might be a little bit too big because I think you got to count on both teams to score. I get that. That's fair.
Okay, you're more. I don't know what the word is. I'm less partial on the I'm just fine with this number, so I'll leave it to you there.
Oh yeah, I'm not going to say this is like a fit going to 53.5 or anything like that. That was just initial instinct.
Yeah, honestly, my gut would be that if anything, it comes down a little bit, but that's purely because of the way that I see Kansas City playing this game, which is long, drawn out drives. In the chat, sorry, I should have, when I said KC was like a clean game today, obviously all the notes about Travis Kelce, which I'm very well aware of. I thought Travis Kelce like might have blew out his Achilles on that play. It was like non-contact injury or something like that. He comes back on like the horse tranquilizers in the second half, basically, and makes like
Varsity Blues.
A tremendous catch. Yeah, basically the Varsity Blues situation. Yeah. So that is a good point. It's a short week. It matters. Yeah, and he was on the field for the final play of the game on defense in the end zone for the Hail Mary, where, by the way, Kirk Cousins, is there a quarterback in the league that loves to take a sack more on a fourth down than Kirk Cousins? I'm not sure there is.
I just don't understand that team. It's snake bitten, I guess. Like this year, it's their own 4-1 score games. They don't look sharp. Fumbles, turnovers, just awful on both sides of the ball.
DJN option says every single 50-50 judgment call by refs has gone Kansas City way in the last 10 months. Probably just coincidence. I will say, being on the Vikings at a very good number, one of the best prices possibly in market, when they picked up that pass interference play, DPI, on the fourth down late in the game, it was incredibly frustrating. Not because it wasn't the right call, but it was the first time in God knows how long that they ruled that a ball was uncatchable on a bat. I like every time I'm yelling at the screen, like uncatchable, it never comes up, but they actually picked it up this time around and uncatchable.
I saw that like when they shot over to that game, and I just caught the tail end because I was watching the Denver Jets game on the other screen, and then I'm like, uncatchable. When's the last time I heard that for a DPI? Yeah, it's probably been a year and a half.
Yeah. All right. I can't. I don't even know if it's been a year and a half. It's been a lot longer than that, I think. We'll move on. Sunday, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. I'm assuming it's a London game, but it could be a Germany game. It could be it's somewhere in Europe because it's 9:30. I don't know.
Someone said London.
Okay, London. Yeah.
I don't know which field though.
Yeah. Okay, so opener here is Baltimore -4, pretty much even. And total of 40.5, juiced ever so slightly to the over. We can get into the Baltimore game from today. If you look purely at box score metrics, the Baltimore-Pittsburgh game is going to seem a lot closer than it was throughout. What's not going to appear in the box score is that the receivers on Baltimore could not catch a touchdown pass to save their lives today. In the first quarter, there was back-to-back drops. There was one by Mark Andrews, and then I think Zay Flowers right afterwards. Later in the game, Nelson Aguilar down the sideline. Lamar Jackson couldn't have thrown a better ball. Went right through his hands. There was another deep pass where Zay Flowers tripped over his feet. Like, I don't even know what to say. I mean, I don't want to turn this into a Pittsburgh discussion. I don't know how they do it in these home games where they just are never in the game and then they somehow win. I don't know how.
So, Scott, yes, I agree. The AFC North games are the absolute worst games to bet and watch. Yes. It feels like if you can get either side at 3.5 or better, like whoever the dog is, just take the dog. That's what it feels like constantly. And just ugly, ugly games. I couldn't get myself to pull the trigger on under this game, though everything in my head was telling me to. Now, it still might not have been a right call. Tons of drops, like you said. Lots of, like, weird shit. But I just don't have a lot of faith in the Ravens offense, period. It's not all drops, but today was all drops. Yeah. And bad decisions towards the end of the game.
It's definitely hit or miss. And, like, they went through a prolonged stretch of the game where they just couldn't get anything going. And that's certainly a challenge whenever you see a line of 4 on a neutral site. That's probably the number that the market would have had it at today, maybe 4.5 or so. So maybe the Ravens are getting downgraded a little bit. I think that there's a pretty substantial difference between these two teams. Like, I know it's neutral site, no home field, and then like the dog is going to be appealing in these types of situations, or maybe just the Ravens not winning by margin. but Tennessee is not very good. Like they're not.
They're overly reliant on play action and running the ball. And I mean, even Vrabel, who went for it on 4th and 1 late in the game, I thought was a horrible, horrible play call. And
oh my God. Yeah. They were in the shotgun, I think, when they gave that to Henry, I believe.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Just absolutely terrible. And they're just not a good football team. But I feel like there's so many not good football teams that are just around that average. Like there's just that middle group that just nobody stands out. The only team that's probably coming out of that group from the beginning of the season early was Cleveland. Maybe Jacksonville moves a little bit more, but people had Jacksonville higher at the beginning of the year. Then they brought them back down, and now they're probably going to go back up a little bit. That just middle group sucks.
The thing is, like, the closing line today in Tennessee Indy means like the market took a stance that there's a substantial difference between Tennessee and Indy, right? Like basically the market ranked Tennessee as a league average team today, and
Yes.
they're not. Now the problem is, well, I mean, listen, I was going to say the problem is typically you'll beat Tennessee by throwing downfield. That's where their weakness is. Can Baltimore do that? I don't know. But Indy actually ran the ball pretty effectively on Tennessee today. We haven't seen that in a long time. So that leaves like a little bit more optimism. But I just feel like Baltimore deserved a better fate today. And not because I bet them or whatever. It just was like a game where there's a lot of things that are not going to be apparent from the box score. But, you know, they held Pittsburgh to 33% success rate on 1st and 2nd down plays. Like they had them in the best situations they could have all day. Pittsburgh couldn't move the ball, and then turnovers play a factor late in the game. Baltimore ends up with 3 turnovers, and that's that. Whereas like Tennessee, I don't know. I just don't see, you know, if you think about the Baltimore defense this year, no one's really been moving it on them. I don't think Tennessee's going to be the one that breaks that open.
Yeah, both of these teams would just feel like a grind to watch on offense. Just an absolute grind. Hard to ask, you know, I think Baltimore to cover 4 against a team like this, but I don't have a lot of interest in Tennessee at this number either.
Should be.
Now,
go ahead.
I think right now my interest would be on the total, and it would be, I think that the number moves down from 40.5 to 40, 39.5, somewhere in that range.
That's exactly where I was going to go with it. So 4 of Baltimore's games have been 41 points or less, and 4 of Tennessee's games have been 39 points or less. Now, with that said, frustrating day. I'll air it all out there. I did have some Tennessee Indy over today. There was 9 trips into the red zone in that game from both teams. There was 2 touchdowns. There was some 4th downs that both teams went for in the red zone that they didn't get in the game. This is a disaster, but I honestly see this number moving down, the total. I'm not saying I necessarily love it, but just the way that these teams have been priced in market pretty regularly, I think that there's going to be a market shift towards the under in this game. So I'm with you on that one. Yeah. All right.
Ooh, face mask first play of the game, really?
Beautiful. That's how you start as a Cowboys. It looked like he got around the, I don't know.
Yeah, I couldn't tell.
I couldn't tell either. I'm going to be in orbit watching this game. I'll try to do my best to remain non-distracted. For all of you who are in here watching this right now, make sure you just smash that like button down below. If you do find value in this every single night, every single Sunday night, just let us know by clicking that like button down below. And that was definitely a face mask. He almost took his entire head off. Also, if you're not subscribed here on Forward Progress, just hit that subscribe button. Turn on bell notifications. Whenever we put out a new video, you will get an alert for it. All right, let's move on to the 1 o'clock slate next week. We have the Commanders coming off of an embarrassing loss on Thursday Night Football, going out on the road to take on the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta opens a 2-point favorite in the game, total of 41.5. Don't really know what to make of that Washington game on Thursday night, other than Howell just continuously takes sacks, like took another 5 sacks. I don't really think it's an O-line thing. I do think it's him holding the ball too long. -2 turnover differential, that's going to hurt. But their defense got carved up by Justin Fields through the passing game. The good news is, I don't know that Desmond Ridder is necessarily capable, although today was one of the best passing games I think that he probably had as an Atlanta Falcon, Clive.
So I didn't see a ton of that game. The highlights that I saw, he actually looked a little bit better throwing the ball. He looked a little bit more comfortable. But, I mean, Washington absolutely got served up. I don't know how different Atlanta and Washington really are, though, in terms of talent. I kind of have these teams a little more even than anything. This feels a little weighted towards Atlanta, but I haven't seen enough of today's game or looked through the box score to see what was what.
So one thing to note about Atlanta today is they had a lot of success through the air. They had a 60% success rate in the passing game, which is kind of unheard of for this offense and what we talked about going into the game. It should be noted that Houston had some like cluster injuries at corner today that went unnoticed. This was actually after I got off of Pizza Buffet, but Derek Stingley's on IR and Shaq Griffin and Tavir Thomas, two of their remaining top three corners, did not play today as well. You had the Tank Dell injury for Houston offensively. I don't really have a good read on either of these two teams. The Washington-Chicago game, the market basically went back and forth on that one over and over. And basically the same thing happened with Houston and Atlanta today, where the market just went back and forth on that one over and over as the Cowboys defense doing what it does. It's going to be offside on Dallas, though. Anyways, the Taylor Heineke Bowl, says RW fan, which is pretty hilarious. I don't know. I feel like a lot of people are going to want to back Washington in like a rebound spot here. This is like traditional NFL, lose ugly. The sharper people tend to find value in that team the next week. I just really don't know about Washington is all. I feel like it's gonna be hard to find a valuable number one way or another here, because the only way you find a valuable number is if you bet Atlanta and it moves out to 3, a super valuable number, and it moves out to 3. And I just don't see that happening.
Yeah. What did today close at for a total in the Atlanta game? 40 what?
It was 4. I'll double check, but I think it was 41.5.
Yeah, it's about right. 41.5, 42, depending.
42 closer today. And it goes under by 1 point or 2 points in the 21-19 final.
I mean, this number feels a little high to me. The total of 42. 41.5, I guess, at Pinnacle. I don't have a...
It's polar opposites for me. Like to me, Atlanta, I'm not speaking like a language that anybody doesn't understand here, but Atlanta to me is like a big time under team with the way that they play, the way they want to move the ball in offense, run it. And Washington's on the other end of the spectrum. 3 of the last 4 weeks, Washington's played games where the total went into the 60s in those games. Just no strong appeal other than what Patrick says in the chat here, which is any Atlanta opponent in this range as a dog is an excellent teaser option. And I do agree with that.
I agree with that a lot. So Scott is just putting a comment. He said exactly what I was kind of thinking. Washington really struggles against the pass, and Desmond Ritter's not going to be the guy that's going to exploit that. Obviously, a huge market correction this week, probably with Washington being 6th. If there's 6, that was quick.
That's my first touchdown score. Sadly, hate to win a bet when
it's against your team, but
yeah, but it's nice to cash it right away. Wow, that was too easy.
Too easy.
Okay,
where were we?
Scott's got a question here in the chat about how we weigh and measure a team, say Tennessee, that is good versus one phase but supposedly bad in the other phase, run versus pass. So like there's no, in my opinion, there's no, like no one's cracked the code on NFL betting where there's only one way to do it, right? And some people put more stock into matchups than others. I'm one of the people that puts stock into matchups, generally speaking. Some people don't handicap based off of like just pure situational angles or whatever, or just whatever their power ratings are for a team. But personally, I think that this type of stuff matters.
I agree. My process for NFL is nowhere near what yours is, but I would say, and I do this in the NBA probably even more so, is I set my base numbers and I have where I think the game should be in median outcomes. And then I start to factor in some of the situational angles and matchups, right? So the situation has to be in some cases so big and so exploitable for one team to move numbers a lot, but sometimes it happens. Um, so it really is case dependent, but I always start with that baseline and then I work off of that, which I'm sure a lot of people do. I don't think that's all that uncommon.
Yeah. All right. On to the next game. NFC North. Listen, not a great game, but it's a great week. It's a game that we can bet. Chicago Bears on a mini bye are at home at Soldier Field. They're getting 3.5 points to the Minnesota Vikings, and the total in the game 49 juiced. Actually, just 49 flat. So Bears 3.5 at home, 49. We don't know the status of Justin Jefferson yet for the Minnesota Vikings. And because we don't, and there's a possibility of him not playing, he did leave this game today with an injury. I think that it was a hamstring injury too, by the way. The likelihood that it will be tough for him to play next week, I think will bring some early Chicago money. Now, Chicago got beat up a little bit as well on Thursday Night Football. Khalil Herbert injured his leg. He tried to tough it out. He left the game again. Backup running back Roshan Johnson got a concussion in that game. Their center, Lucas Patrick, got a concussion in that game. So it's not like there's not injuries on both sides. But I think the early market move here is likely to be towards Chicago. The combination of Justin Jefferson plus the fact that somehow the Vikings still, every game comes down to the last possession, I think people will find the Bears attractive. I have like a different opinion on the game possibly because I have to watch Minnesota a little bit more today, but I do feel like if it does get down to 3, there's going to be some people interested in buying back there.
Yeah, I think so too. I need a little bit of time with today's game, I think, to look through it. And I mean, the Justin Jefferson issue is huge. But what was it probably before this week? I don't have to look at headlines. But I almost think Minnesota would have been probably 4.5 or more.
Yeah, I think even just based off of like market close this week, 4.5 would have been about right. So definitely there's been an adjustment over the course of the week. It's whether or not it's been warranted is the question. Chicago's offense does feel different and
much more design. I saw more design runs for Justin Fields. He was more just active and not in it. It didn't feel like he was in his head. Now, Washington, the commies help with that. A little bit easier to get into a rhythm and go. I've been waiting for Minnesota to kind of break out as a team and just be better. I still think they're market rated where they should be, and I think they're just slightly. This is, mostly the polar opposite of last year. This year they're performing in probably the lower quartile of like their distribution, but I think their talent is where the market's ranking them. I don't know what else to say about them.
Yeah. I mean, like, I agree with you. You kind of look at it's the same story every week, right? Like they turn the ball over. It's a disaster. They punted one time today. They punted one time against the Chiefs. They lost the game by a touchdown. I mean, they turned the ball over on their first possession again with a fumble. Like I think it was the first play of the game. Like
I think it was.
It's just it's a disaster for them. The thing with the Bears is that they had a 36% success rate on 33 pass plays against Washington. It was a lot of big plays for them, not necessarily like them steadily marching. And I have to look at Justin Fields against the blitz. Minnesota's going to blitz a lot. I think that his mobility is really going to help him in that type of situation. The total on the Bears Vikings here was 49. I can't help but think that's a bit low.
Depends on the injuries, I guess, right? Like, what do you think Justin Jefferson's worth to a total?
Well, I think he's worth something, but like in this game in particular, like if you want to talk about a game where you can afford to miss out on your top receiver, it's against a team that's missing like 3 of their top 4 players in the secondary.
Yeah, I mean, my leans are both like at these numbers, Minnesota and the over.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think the market's going to move towards Minnesota, at least not right away. Like it's going to wait. But if it goes down to 3, like you said, I think you're going to get a lot of buyback.
I cannot get over how bad the Bears defense is. They had like the best performance they've had in forever against Washington this past week. And I really just think so much of that is Howell not being able to get rid of the ball quickly. So
yeah, and I mean, DJ Moore looked like Justin Jefferson last week, like in terms of like the huge chunk plays, and Minnesota's probably going to try and game plan against that.
Yep. Although they do take a lot of risks. They do. Okay, let's move it along. The Seahawks are coming off the bye. They're going out on the road to take on the Cincinnati Bengals. This will be a very fascinating game to handicap. Cincy is laying 2.5, juice 2.5 at home, 2.5 minus 114. The total in the game, 45.5. Really,
what would Seattle have been in terms of being a dog in Cincinnati week 1? 4.5, 5.5, something like that.
So Cincy week 1 was roughly like 4 points above league average. Seattle was roughly a half point above league average. So yeah, something like 5.5.
Jeez. I mean, if you would have told somebody they get Cincinnati at home against Seattle at 2.5, less than 3, I mean, insta bet. Now I don't know what to do.
Yeah, there's the bye week. Here's the inherent challenge we're going to have with Seattle going forwards is like, do you just throw the stats from the first few games out the window? Do they matter? Like it was like years ago when Baker Mayfield and the Cleveland Browns played 3 straight games in like inclement weather and they couldn't throw the ball. Do you just get rid of those games, throw them out the window? I tend to think that like at some point we're going to have to do that. At some point the Cincy offense is going to become healthy.
Yeah. I mean, Jamar Chase looked great today. I mean, Burrow looked much, much, much better. I think Cincy's going to probably take money after this week, especially. I think a lot of that's probably going to happen where people are just going to throw out week 1 through 3 or 4 and just be okay with it.
My gut is that the over is going to get bet in this game and like probably up into a range of 46.5, 47. I don't think that based off of this year's numbers, you can justify that. But if someone is saying just Cincy's offense is what it is now and not what we saw 4 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, it's hard not to justify the over. Cincy's defense is not great. They struggle to get pressure. I mean, they generated a pick 6 today, which was nice when Josh Dobbs was backed up against the goal line. And ultimately, like Cincy's offense was just on the field for the entirety of the game. But when you think of both of these teams, and when I say you think of both these teams, I'm talking about a healthy Bengals. You think of their offenses leading the way for both these sides.
Yeah, and I didn't see a ton of the Cincinnati Cardinal game. I did see some. Dobbs looked like he had a good amount of time and was able to had more opportunities to move the ball, and I think a better quarterback would have done a much better job there. So 2 mediocre defenses and 2 offenses that can throw. I think this number is probably going to move up through 47 or 247.
My only concern with Cincy's offense is they did finally hit the big play today to Jamar Chase, but that still seems very few and far between. Like they're a very methodical offense, 4.9 yards per play again today. But yeah, I feel pretty strongly that the over is going to catch money in this game. Anyone who watches tape of today's game and sees like Burrow looking somewhat normal is going to
immediately revert back to like probably last year's numbers with a slight adjustment
or whatever they were going into the year. Right.
Yeah.
Which is why I think that the side is going to be really interesting in this game as well. Because Seattle coming off the bye, you upgrade that a little bit, or you upgrade the team coming off of a bye. But yeah, now like this is basically moving right now.
Last year they closed at 0.15 EPA per play on dropbacks. This year, I think they're negative 0.1. And all of that is from the first few weeks.
Yeah. Total going up and spread moving towards Cincy. We got a 3 at Pinnacle, basically. -2.5, -26 / -3. So early money, a believer in the Cincinnati Bengals going forwards. And again, that's why we do the show in real time on Sunday nights, because you can listen to it tomorrow morning. And honestly, it's fine if you listen to it on Monday morning. You still probably get something valuable out of it. But if you're looking to get down at the absolute best numbers, peak prices at solid limits at Pinnacle, 3,000 on the side, 2,000 on total, 2,000 on money line, got to do it on Sunday nights. All right. We're going to skip over the 49ers and the Browns. 49ers in action on Sunday Night Football right now, and move straight to the Saints hitting the road again, back-to-back road games, taking on the Houston Texans. Early market. Saints laying 2 on the road. Total 40.5. Juiced pretty heavily to the over at -114. Definitely have to talk about the Saints today, because they were one of the most impressive teams, at least defensively. I tweeted some stats about the New England offense today, but it was frankly an embarrassment. They didn't have a red zone trip for the entire game. They turned the ball over 3 times. They had 3.1 yards per play, 22% success rate. Not sure I've seen that at any point over the course of the year. Pretty dominant defensive performance from the Saints. Houston just couldn't get the ball. They tried to run the ball a lot on early downs. It wasn't working for them. It was a lot of 3rd and long, and they just couldn't overcome that to end up winning a game, despite the fact that they generated a couple of turnovers. They won the turnover margin +2, which is unusual. I'm very interested in this one, because Houston is a team that I think is very polarizing in people's eyes, Clive.
Do you think the same about the Saints too? Or do you think this week, because I was surprised the market ended up where it did on this game for New Orleans. I thought this was a good price for them. I don't know if everybody did, but the market moved against me. But I was surprised. I don't know. Were you?
I also was. So there was overnight money on the Patriots last night, and I was a little bit surprised just because of like the injury report for the Patriots on defense, right? Matthew Judon, Christian Gonzalez. Now, this isn't new information, but typically speaking, those teams like get faded in market, right? At least like midweek, early in the week, there was not like a flood of Saints money at any point. I think people were turned off a lot by last week's performance against the Bucs. And if you remember, they caught a lot of steam on game day as well. So some heavy hitters bet the Saints last week on game day, got disappointed. I'm not saying that had anything to do with this week, but much different performance for New Orleans. Now I wonder if we're back into overrated territory for the Saints.
Well, yeah. I mean, if somebody looks at the score and says 34 points and thinks that this was because of the offense, they're going to be severely misguided, right? Like, the Saints' identity has become a defensive one the last few years. I think you mentioned on Pizza Buffet earlier about the number of games under 20 points or something like that. I don't remember. But Saints feel like an under team. Offense is not something that's clicked for them in quite some time. And is this a defense where Stroud finally struggles a little bit?
So the Saints have played 5 games this year. The final scores in their games have summed to 31, 37, 35, 35, 34. Definite under team in some capacity. Even today, not a lot of shots downfield. Like scored 34 points today. Olave and Carr went under their yards totals. I have to really look into the Saints pressure numbers here, because basically the deal with Stroud this year has been, if he has a clean pocket to throw, he's going to burn you. If he has pressure, he's going to have problems. But this is like a veteran defense that's been really good. I don't hate the under as a look here. As much as I'm high on Stroud, I still don't hate the under as a look here because at the end of the day, it is a rookie against a very solid defense. And I'm still just not that high on the Saints offense.
Same. That's what I was thinking. I have a hard time with the side, but I kind of feel like the total goes down a little bit. Not a ton. Like, I don't think it's going to end up like 39 or anything, but it might end up at 40 or 40 and a half. I think under deserves a look.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that one. Okay. Another AFC South matchup next week. Jacksonville returns home from the 2-week London trip. That'll be interesting, by the way. That'll be talked about a lot this week. They return home to Jacksonville, Florida. They're hosting the Indianapolis Colts, who may or may not be without Anthony Richardson, who suffered another injury today. 4.5, Jacksonville favorite at home. Total of 45.5. Jacksonville, impressive performance today against Buffalo. Indy, impressive performance today against Tennessee. But I definitely think that the market will be a little bit more inclined to upgrade Jacksonville for that performance, where they basically led the Bills for the vast majority of the week of the game.
Yeah, and you said it yourself too. Like, Indy moving the ball today was on the ground, uncharacteristically against a Tennessee defense that's normally pretty good against the run. I don't know that they'll have that same success again. I think it's time to put some respect on Jacksonville defense if you haven't been already.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I can admit, so I was pretty wrong about that unit going into the year. Like, I thought they were going to be bad, and they're not.
They're a pure over team last year, and it wasn't just because of their offense. It was because everybody was able to move the ball against them. So,
yeah,
to be fair, you didn't have any good priors to go off of to give you any other indication. And I was in the same boat. But now I've adjusted enough where I feel like, all right, I think this defense is pretty legit.
It'll be interesting to see who gets the nod at quarterback, if Anthony Richardson can come back or if it's Gardner Minshew. We've seen the Jags like lay an egg in this similar spot at home to Houston. Granted, that number was very different. If we think back to it now, Houston closed 7.5. Jacksonville closed 7.5 in that home game against Houston. We didn't know how good CJ Stroud was yet. This one down to 4.5. I don't know. Like, I honestly don't know what's going to happen here because I think the quarterback situation is very. Minshew's a fine backup. He's a great backup. Like, most people would want Gardner Minshew as a backup, but Richardson just poses like a different threat, so to speak. And I'd be much more inclined to want to bet Indy as a dog if it's Richardson, not necessarily Minshew out there.
Yeah, it's like that distribution of outcomes for different quarterbacks, right? Like, Richardson's got this higher upside on the curve, and Minshew's here, which is fine. But as a dog, think about that, I guess, when you want to bet this game, right? Like, I could see Jacksonville covering by margin here a lot more easily with Minshew than I can with Richardson. But it's a wider range of outcomes.
So one other thing I think that we'd be remiss not to talk about is the fact that Indy was like a pretty battered team this week, still without their left tackle, Bernard Raymond. On defense, Shaq Leonard, Kwity Paye didn't play. Jacksonville, on the other hand, they did have some injuries. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that they're a completely healthy team, but they basically went up against a Buffalo defense that ended up being decimated by injuries when this game was all said and done. Like, Matt Milano left. He's got a serious knee injury. Christian Benford was out. Things worked with Trey White already on IR, obviously, for the Buffalo Bills. Von Miller, didn't play much of the second half. Greg Rousseau was out. Daquan Jones left the game with a pec injury. Like, the Buffalo defense was a disaster. So maybe we're being a little bit too quick here with the Jacksonville offense because that still hasn't been a good unit yet. Typically, if you're going to lay 4.5 points, you want to do it with a team that's, pretty trusted to score. And I'm not sure that they're there yet.
Yeah. Who's Indy's toughest offense that they've played this season?
So Indy's gone up against Jacksonville week 1. Like this is a
I
rematch.
tend to throw out
Week
week one a lot for most teams, but yeah, it's fair.
So then I guess like Houston, Baltimore, Rams, Tennessee. From an efficiency perspective, I have the Rams as like just slightly better than Baltimore, depending on what metric you use. From an EPA perspective, the Rams, I would say.
Okay. I feel like the Colts are going to struggle. Maybe this is a game where Jacksonville can really kind of get going offensively. But
have
like
we
you
not
said,
thought
4.5
that?
is tough given what we've seen so far.
Like the output for Jacksonville's offense today was massive. 474 net yards. They had 87 plays of offense. They had the ball for almost 39 minutes in the game. Offensively, numbers are really good. It's just a matter of now dissecting that performance. And I mean, Buffalo basically was without half of their starters on defense.
Yeah, I feel bad for Buffalo fans. I mean, they were kind of cruising and looking really good, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse.
It's tough. Key injuries on defense. It's tough. The AFC is definitely wide open. All right. Speaking of the AFC, another juggernaut, although they did get smashed by Buffalo last week, it's the Miami Dolphins at home again. They closed as pretty large favorites against the Giants today, minus 13, minus 12.5, depending on the book. And now they're laying 13.5 at home next week to the Carolina Panthers. Total in the game, 48.5 for this one, Clive.
And damn, did Miami do everything possible not to cover that game. Holy hell. Like that was. So I had a live bet on Miami, a little bit alt number, and it didn't work out too well. But I mean, geez, they were at 12, 13 yards of play for like probably through the third quarter, something like that, before, they started running the ball a little bit more to run out the clock. They're really explosive. And I mean, does Carolina have a better defense than the Giants?
Yes. I wholeheartedly believe they do. The Giants are just like, they cannot generate any pressure whatsoever. Azeez Ojulari got injured again today. Like they have nobody on defense. It's funny because like the Tua looked awful comment from Research Flat Earth. Like he made 2 bad throws that resulted in interceptions. They turned the ball over 3 times. They still won by margin. They generated 9.7 yards per play, 60% success rate on offense, 524 net yards. Like I almost feel like we watched both of these teams play this type of game today. Now, granted, Carolina went to Detroit. They were at 8.5 point dog. In the span of a week, they're now 13.5. It's different. The Dolphins closed, like I said, 12.5. They're 13.5. So there's like a little bit of the premium you have to pay with Miami. But Miami can score on teams, and they will run up the score on teams. Carolina just went to the road, got shredded by a good offensive game plan without their number 1 receiver in Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's just so hard. Like, it's so hard for me to consider Carolina. And it's the same way that nobody bet the Giants in market today. Like, no one bet them.
So I was surprised that the Detroit number didn't end up at 10.5 or better. Like, that's just where I thought it would go.
That's the biggest misbet of the week for me is Detroit.
Yeah.
Because as soon as I saw St. Brown out and Brian Branch out, I'm like, you know what? Like, key offensive player, key defensive player. It's the NFL. We see this shit happen all the time where just team gets up for a game. And like within a minute, it was like, what the hell are we doing here?
Yeah. Like they have enough. And I mean, I would not be surprised if this number goes through 14 into 14.5 or more.
Yeah, I honestly think the early money will bring Miami up. I'm not saying that it's like necessarily a valuable bet, but maybe we're just like really slow to catch up to how like Bryce Young is bad. And yes. I talked about this today on Pizza Buffet. Like you can give me all the excuses in the world. And I don't even say they're excuses. It's valid reasons, right? Offensive line's not good. They don't have good wide receiver weapons, whatever, but he's not good right now. He cannot perform at a high level right now. It's just a matter of whether he could do something in garbage time And
that's
that's a
what he has been
possibility.
doing. That's where his numbers have been coming, like low pressure situations, prevent-ish type defenses, right? Like, that's all he's done. If I take out garbage time, I'll be interested to see kind of what his EPA looks like all season with it and without it. I don't think Carolina is going to be able to move the ball. I think they're a worse team than the Giants, and I struggle though with this total because one, the defense is better than the Giants, and their offense is probably worse, even with as banged up as the Giants were, no Saquon, whatever. I still think I expect more out of a Giants offense slightly than the Panthers.
It depends. The O-line was so bad. It's really tough to compare them right now because they're both so bad. Like honestly, that's the challenge right now at the moment. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, subjectively, Miami, you give me a Miami total, but they didn't go over the total today at 47 because the other team couldn't score.
And with the other team getting a pick six, like to get points on the board.
Now, granted, that was going to be a touchdown one way or the other.
Yes.
Like it didn't really, but you're right. The Giants got a pick six, which helped their, but like, I think there's a better chance of Carolina scoring in garbage time than the Giants today, especially since Daniel Jones got hurt. Tyrod Taylor comes in. Like Carolina had some semblance of an offense in garbage time and has for this season.
Yeah. I mean, this is what's the Miami team total going to be at 48?
31 and a half. No.
32.
Yeah, because today's was 30 and a half over. So it'll be 31 and a half juiced over.
Interesting.
Yeah. I hate these games. I hate these games where one team is so clearly better than the other.
Yeah,
maybe
hard.
the play, maybe the play is someone might be able to look this up really quickly. Trying to think about what the score was at halftime in this game, because that pick six happened before the half, correct?
Yeah, and then Miami went down the field and put points on the board.
Okay, so Miami still covered the first half spread. Was it 21-10 at the half?
I believe so. Let me check.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
yeah.
it was
no, it's 17-10. They still covered the spread in the first half, which was -6.5, -120, or -7, the push. But like that's almost the way to play Miami is you're going to have to pay a premium for the first half number. But yeah.
Maybe even a team total over for Miami. Like they're not going to have any more trouble than Detroit did today, banged up. So
the one thing I'll say again, just like you got to evaluate all the things that are out there. Carolina, Dante Jackson was out today as well. So they have JC Horn on IR. It's possible he could be back next week because you missed 4 games on IR. I don't think he's going to be ready, but it's possible he could be back next week. Xavier Woods out. So Carolina's missing pieces in their secondary. If they get some bodies back, that changes things for me in this game. And I think it'll change things for the market as well. But if not, this is just another field day for Miami offense.
Yeah, no, it's a good point.
Okay. The team that smacked around the Panthers, Detroit Lions. Kanish's Detroit Lions, who, by the way, I think are actually like really dangerous. They were just blowing the Panthers D-line off the ball today. That offensive line is dangerous. They're going out to take on the Bucks on the road. Bucks coming off of a bye. Obviously, Bucks had some injury situations before the bye, so the bye kind of came at a good time with Mike Evans, who had to leave their last game with a hamstring injury. Jamel Dean was out with like a neck or shoulder injury as well, so could use that to get healthy. The line here is Detroit laying 3 -113, and the total at 45.5. Man,
I was almost with you, Ricky Flower. Bucks are the most overrated team in the league, probably, or they're worse than Jets. Probably not. You lost me there.
I'm a little bit distracted because there was a fumble here, I think, by Tony Pollard. which I think there's no chance this was recovered in bounds. I don't know. Maybe I'm
punched
wrong.
out off. Great
Like,
angle.
Definitely touching someone who's laying out of bounds. And did this there's no chance this is going to be the 49ers ball. If it is, they might as well abolish the league. It hits his leg while he's laying out of bounds. Then the recovery, doesn't.
He didn't look like he had control while he was in bounds, even if the ball stayed in bounds. So it looked like he was gathering the ball, sliding out of bounds.
Yeah, agreed. And I'm still convinced it touched someone while they were laying out of bounds. Anyways, we can move on. Lions and Bucks.
What's number 3?
3. I think 3 is a good number. So typically, whenever I see 3, it's like, which way is this more likely to get bet? With Tampa Bay coming off of a bye week, I think it's more likely to get bet towards Tampa. But I can see this very easily being a double-sided game that just closes 3. I don't think that there's, again, I'm just doing this basically off the cuff in terms of how do I feel about this line. It just stands out to me as being fine.
Yeah. I think I could see interest on both sides.
Yes. Justin says 45.5 is low for a Lions game. That's correct. It's typically low for a Lions game. It's also typically pretty high for a Tampa Bay game. How much credit are we willing to give Tampa Bay's offense right now is the question. Are people believing that the Baker Mayfield thing is real?
I don't know. Like, your implied here is 24-21 Detroit. Do we think Tampa's do we feel confident that their median is 21 points against this team?
Depends on game state. I don't either. I mean, Tampa Bay had 20 points late in the fourth quarter at home against the Chicago Bears. They ended up winning that game 27-17, but I'm still a non-believer.
Not a believer in their offense. I don't have interest in the over at this number. I have interest in the under at 45.5. Without looking at anything more.
From a market perspective, I think Tampa Bay will take money. I do. The more I think about it, the more I think Tampa Bay will get bet in this game. I don't know that that's right, but their efficiency numbers are solid. Really good, especially defensively. Adjusting for quality of competition, top 6 in both success rate and EPA on defense. The average is the offense has been average. Tough one.
I can't see this going to 3.5. I think it's more likely that this closes something 3 even Detroit, or I kind of think it's going to go that way.
I'm so upset right now. I can't even tell you. It hits a foot there.
Finally, they give us a decent angle.
I'm in orbit. This is why I hate. They're always oh yeah, you know what? Just call the turnover or whatever. You get the booth review on the turnover plays. It's no, you get.
Oh, that's such a shit response. I hate that.
Okay. Back to normal. What are we going to do? Such is life. Got to deal with NFL officials. New England and Las Vegas. We'll pass on that one for now, as Vegas is playing tomorrow night against Green Bay. Okay, this is an interesting one. I can't believe I'm saying this because of the teams and where we thought they would be prior to the season. It's the NFC West matchup. The Rams at home. I'll use the home in quotations at SoFi. Laying 6. I mean, it's basically a 5.5, and the total 46 in the game as well. I have an immediate thought on this game. I have a couple immediate thoughts on this game, But the first immediate thought I have on this game is that this total's too low.
Yeah, that's mine. I'm not sure how I feel about the side yet. I kind of like the Rams off of just instinct, but I don't have anything to base that on. It was just gut feel. But no, I think 47 is too low.
I think Arizona's going to draw money in this game. I do. I think our closing price in this game is going to be closer to like 4.5. I don't think people are ready for the Rams to need to win by margin just yet.
Yeah, that's fair. What did we close at today? 3.5 on the road against Philly? Or at home. Sorry, I meant at home. Plus 3.5. Jesus.
I mean, the Rams are they're getting market interest. Don't get me wrong. So did Arizona this week, by the way. They got a lot, although a lot of that was early week. But I don't know. I feel like at no point over the course of this year would this number have been remotely close to 6. Now, obviously, you have Matthew Stafford back. You have to account for that. But
no, you know what? You're right. 6 feels like a lot to ask.
Right? I mean, Arizona's got what? James Conner left today's game. Actually, they had some secondary injuries as well. Antonio Hamilton, Jalen Thompson, concussion, hamstring. I don't see this over. I don't see this total below. I think this has got to go up. Basically, what I'm saying is I think this has got to go up. Especially with Kupp back in that offense. Now, like, I know they did nothing in the second half against the Eagles today. The Cardinals are very different than the Eagles.
Well, yeah.
Like, the Cardinals generate a lot of pressure. The Eagles generate a lot of pressure. They can rush 4, get to the quarterback. They did that a bunch today. Just looking at Arizona's finals, 36 points, 59, 44, 51, 54. So pretty high scoring. The Rams have had some low scoring games so far, including today's, honestly, 23-14. I still don't know though how that was there. Connor's asking what the Bengals cards closed at, which was Bengals cards was 45.5. That was not knowing what the Bengals offense was, by the way. Like, no one had any idea.
True. This is already getting bet up to the over. Like, it's not taking long. Like, it's already happening.
Yeah. And it's happening across the board too. It's not just one spot. Yeah.
So yeah. I agree with that. That the Rams it's a little bit tougher of a sell, laying 6, but
Yep. Did McCaffrey fumble this?
I don't know. I think his anytime touchdown was like minus 200 today.
It's been like that for weeks now. And Cowboys ball.
They're signaling.
Signal it. I mean, all it took was somebody in here to I don't know where the comment was, but somebody made a comment and I could just see it all happening. You know, when someone says like this is going to be a rout, going to be a blowout, whatever.
Yeah.
Come on, don't be down. Be up. Oh yeah, it's out.
That's out.
It's out. All right. For all you listening on Monday, I'm sure you're really loving the live commentary, but we do it during the live show. Okay, next game. Eagles on the road at the New York Jets.
Short trip. Just right over into Jersey.
You know what? I didn't even think of that. I'm glad you did. Spread 6, total 42. Seeing an Eagles game with 42 is so weird to me, but obviously you have to take into account the opponent as well.
I mean,
have we come around? Has the market come around on the Jet? The market faded the Jets today, but that's 2 in a row now. Is there going to be some sort of change? Like the Eagles score points. Can the Jets score points? Oh man.
against this defense.
Like it seems like remember when Sam Darnold was seeing ghosts with the Jets? It seems like a Zach Wilson seeing ghosts type of game.
Oh, Dak. You're trying to punt on first down?
that had a lot of airtime there. I like when they go downfield though from their own end zone. I'm a big fan of that rather than what we saw with the Arizona Cardinals, immediate pick six after stopping Joe Mixon on the 1 yard line.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's think about Philly prices in recent weeks, right? I mean, Philly on the road today, 3.5. Now they're going to go to the Jets next week, and it's 6 already. That's like some inflation, but you actually have to account for the fact that they covered this week, right? As well. And that's been kind of a consistent theme for them when they went out on the road at Tampa Bay, similar type of range in terms of, where they were priced, and they won that game pretty handily. New England by 5. They fared well in this similar spot this year where like people feared backing them in these like trap games, and they just keep covering them.
Yeah, I kind of think this goes to 6.5. Honestly. Oh God. I kind of thought this was going to be the week that somebody offensively not exposes San Francisco, but at least shows a couple of like some soft spots here or there where, gets it. And I know it's just the first quarter, but there hasn't been anything to like smile about offensively.
No, I'm certainly not smiling, Clive, if you can tell.
Yeah.
If you can tell. I don't really have a strong feel for this game one way or another. I really don't.
I have a harder time feeling what the total should be as opposed to I think the Eagles will probably take a little bit of money at 6. But the total feels, today's total was 42.5 against the Broncos. Mm-hmm. Now I get that the Broncos defense is, bottom 3 in the league, if not worse. But what are the Jets going to do against the Eagles defense? The Eagles defense is far from bad, right? Like,
yeah, they just limited a very good Rams offense to like nothing in the second half.
They got Cooper Kupp back, and I think this is a tough ask for the Jets. Like,
so do I. I really do. What happened today, like what's made the Jets effective, Breece Hall today just had a field day, and they were
razzle, dazzle, dazzle.
The likelihood that the Denver offense looks a lot better than
Jeff Kittle 2 touchdowns or no?
I do not have Kittle 2 touchdowns. I do not. They're breaking out all the plays, man. They're breaking out all the plays. I don't know how the Jets scored either. I'm trying to come up with ways right now, like just off the top of my head. And listen, it's the NFL. All sorts of stuff happens. We've seen like the Eagles go into these defensive lulls at times this year. But yeah.
So like what Daniel's saying in the chat now, right? Like if the Eagles go up big, they're just going to ice the clock and start running the ball and controlling the ball a little bit more. And I agree with that. Like I can easily see this game being, 30-3, like a game like that where the Jets put nothing on the board and Philly might not blow the doors off into the 40s themselves. So I feel like it might be one of those games where they have to do it themselves. So Eagles team total is something that I would maybe have interest in this game.
Yeah. Where you're like scared that the Jets can't push you over the game total.
Yeah.
I hear you. All right. This Sunday Night Football next week. This is the last game we're talking about today because Monday Night Football is Cowboys Chargers, and we still got the Cowboys in action right now. But Sunday Night Football, this is what we'll be watching, Clive, next week while we're doing the show.
Potentially with no Daniel Jones, by the way.
Yeah, Daniel Jones with a neck injury. The Giants going out on the road to take on the Buffalo Bills. Now, why? I don't know why this has to. Sometimes where you just like really, really want to fade a certain team, or you've really identified something in market that you just want to act on quickly. Well, what I really wanted to act on quickly this week was the breadth of the Buffalo defensive injuries, which are massive. And I can't do that.
Because the Giants can't do anything with it.
No, they can't. They have no offensive line. Like this is a disaster of a game. And it's almost like I don't even care. Like the fact that the Giants couldn't move the ball on the Dolphins today, number two, dead last efficiency defense coming into this game, that pretty much tells you all you need to know. Like it's just not going to happen for them. They just can't do anything behind this offensive line. Like how many times do we have to see it now in a row before 15? The number's 15, man. 15 and a total of 46.5.
And I have a hard time. This might be a Bills team total over or a Giants team total under. Like this is one of those mismatchy type games where it's just so slanted in two directions that it's just really, really, really rough.
The Bills coming off of embarrassing performance today for the most part, trailing the duration of the game. I mean, listen, in all seriousness, like the reality is if these teams played today with where the Miami number closed, it's not that much of an exaggeration, right? Yeah. Like what does the market have Buffalo better than Miami on a neutral right now?
Point and a half, something like that.
Maybe two. Like maybe two, right? So like it's not like it's this super inflated number all of a sudden, which is weird to me. And I know it's because Buffalo lost, but the Giants are horrendous.
Yeah, and the Giants should be, I mean, they were probably bottom 4 team, like in terms of, market rating this week, I guess.
Yeah.
It's only going to get worse without Daniel Jones. Even Tyrod Taylor got banged up a play or two, like before the end of the game. So it's really, I have a hard time trusting an over in this game because of the exact reasons what we saw in the Dolphins game today.
I know it's the same handicap as Eagles Jets, right? It's like, do you trust? Well, different because one team is way more likely to blow out the others, but do you trust one team to score enough to get you over that total because you're fairly confident that one other team is going to score? Miami, Carolina, right? Next week. Fairly confident Miami's going to score. Can you trust the Carolina offense to get you there? I have no idea where the market's going to go on this game because Buffalo does have a ton of injuries on defense. Maybe Tyrod Taylor like just adds an element of surprise next week where it's harder for the Bills to game plan. Like that's the only thing I could come up with.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. That's like hope upon hope. Like,
yep.
It's just ugly. I feel like it's going to be an ugly game. I'm not going to want to watch it, but I will. And I don't know which way. I want to be able to give something actionable in this game, and I just don't think I can. Like 15 feels fair. I don't know if it moves to 15.5 or 16, but I mean that's not huge. It's where does the total go? Like, does the total just stay at this number? I feel like it probably does.
I honestly just don't think there's going to be a ton of betting interest in this game. I really don't. Yeah. I really don't. I saw a comment that in the chat of Daniel Jones was like efficient. Jones was decently efficient today before going out. I don't think that was true, honestly. I think it was pretty rough. Like he didn't go out until late in the game, and their entire offensive metrics do not reek of efficient at all.
No, I didn't see anything that looked good from him. Like scrambled a little here and there, but at no point did I feel like they were a threat to score.
Yeah.
0.05 EPA per play, average depth of target 7.1, like nothing.
Yeah. No. Before we wrap, let's actually just talk about a couple of the matchups this week that are involving the Sunday night team. So if you're listening back after the fact, you haven't listened live, We got 12 minutes left here in the second quarter, and the Cowboys are trailing the 49ers 14-0 right now. Next week, San Fran goes out on the road to take on Cleveland. I'm assuming that Deshaun Watson will be back post-bye week. I think that's a fair assumption to make. If this line was open today, I would almost assuredly say it would be a San Fran -3 on the road type of scenario. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah.
In that range, right?
Yeah.
If San Fran continues to steamroll in this game, I don't think it can open 3 anymore. I don't think so.
No, probably not. What's Deshaun Watson status?
Don't know for sure yet, but I think the likelihood he's going to play is high.
Okay.
I mean, they did say that he was very close to starting the last game, right?
Yeah.
So
I just didn't know if he had any setbacks. I hadn't heard anything, but never hurts to ask. This probably goes to 3.5 if San Fran wins this by, double digits.
Yeah, that's probably the opener. Still think it'll close right in around 3 for that game. The more interesting one, not more interesting because it involves my team. I don't want to, say that, but Monday Night Football next week should be a good game. It's the Cowboys and the Chargers. It's in Los Angeles at SoFi. But similarly, I think that had these teams played today, Dallas would be like a small favorite on the road. Now I can see things changing there depending on the situation today.
Yeah, well, what should Dallas likely have been on the road, even though it's the Chargers?
Looking at like general market power rankings, probably
2?
something like Dallas -2. Yeah. This, what Mark says the look ahead was Dallas -2.5. This will be like as many Cowboys fans as they have at home games, basically in that stadium.
Yeah.
Chargers will be using silent count at on offense.
Yeah, it'll be rough for them. Now, say this ends in the same fashion, like we were just saying for San Francisco. Does this become San Francisco 1.5? I'm saying Dallas 1.5 on the road.
Slightly less, yeah. Yeah, I mean, listen, this is the nature of the primetime games, right? Especially one that's going to be as highly viewed as this one tonight. There has to be some sort of market impact of Dallas getting blown out if it ends this way.
I feel like a lot of people would have interest, even if this game goes the way that it's continuing. If you can get 1 or 1.5 with Dallas, I feel like that would get a lot of interest.
I think so too, especially coming off of the blowout primetime loss. The situational trends.
True.
It's only second quarter. Seth's right. It's not over. But I do see that McCarthy and Schottenheimer are trying to establish the run right now, down 14 points on second down. So we'll see. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting matchups next week, and 2 of them that are stemming from this game. All right, that's a big one. That is a big one. Interested for anyone that's watching right now in the comments. Curious if anyone's placed any bets so far and what they are. Just in real time here, I can say that at Pinnacle, Miami's been bet up to -14. So that came off the 13.5. Total up a little bit there, 48.5. That Arizona Cardinals Rams total just keeps getting bet up. And a little bit of a tick towards the Eagles and the Jets right after we talked about that game as well, but not a massive one. Just a little
and a tick away from the Rams. And I think, what do you got for the Bears total? Bears Vikings total. Did that go 49.5 or 50 yet or no?
Bears Vikings 49.5 ish. Yeah.
And the Cardinals
that's even with
totals going up too.
That's even with the threat of Jefferson and the hamstring injury. Like, the Bears defense, I don't know with the corner injuries, if they're even going to be any resistance, even with Jefferson out. I think that's a pretty explosive offense. Matt bet Atlanta, Washington under 42, Texans money line, Patrick's on the Colts +6, Niners -2.5, Lions 2.5, Cincy over, Rams over. All right. Another edition of Forward Progress in the books. I'll ask everyone that's in here, just make sure you smash that like button down below. Make sure you're subscribed. Honestly, it's very important to us. We want to grow the content as big as possible. I'm not someone that's like, I don't lie to the audience or anything. Just transparent as it gets. Bigger we are, easier it is for us to be able to do this stuff going forward. So if you can subscribe to the channel, set notifications, watch our content over the course of the week. Tomorrow, we got Clive TA and Suma with G-Stack George. They're doing takeaways tomorrow afternoon, 2 p.m. Eastern time. Clive had a really good weekend again. Hit another big first touchdown score with Zay Jones.
There we go. You got 7 on the board for Dallas.
And we get 7 on the board. Let's go. Let's go. Dak is back. Who knew when he threw the ball, good things happen? Good things that happen. Appreciate everyone in here.
Yeah, thank you.
Monday night watch along tomorrow night. Packers Raiders, not the greatest game, but for those of you who are in the watch alongs pretty regularly over on the Hammer HQ, you know it's a good time. We have a blast. Somehow we fill the time. Great throw by Dak. I'm excited for myself, Rob Pizzola, for Clive Bixby. He needs the script for next week, by the way, people. He needs the script.
Yeah. My library card got revoked a little while ago, got blocked.
For our producer, Jason Cooper, and for Pinnacle Sportsbook, use code HAMMER if you're signing up in Ontario. And of course, please play responsibly. This has been another Sunday night edition of Forward Progress. Me and Clive back together next Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time. More content here tomorrow. And of course, the live watch along tomorrow night over on the Hammer HQ. Peace out, everyone. Hope you have a good night. Good luck with the rest of your bets.